Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm with my good friend Francisco Dow. He's a world traveler, entrepreneur, and probably one of the most genuine guys I've ever met. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Francisco.
I don't know if I can come up with a better introduction than what you just gave me. I've got so much to live up to now. As Joshua said, my name's Francisco. I travel and I entrepreneur, whatever the hell that means. Here's the latest, which I'll pitch some more. But I don't know. I guess, Josh, you know most or some of my background, which I think is probably more humorous than most people. I tell people when I introduce myself, they're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Forrest Gump." Like, it's just really completely random, bizarre. You did what? Yeah, I did that. So I don't know. I would start and I'll fill in the blanks.
Well, I'll give some context how I met you. It was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I get off a plane in Lima, Peru, and meet up with some friends of mine and then meet you. And it turns out that you organized a trip for, I don't know, 18, 25, 30 young entrepreneurs and well-respected individuals to go hike the Inca Trail, as well as, I don't know, we'll call it Mad Max through the desert. And it turns out you did a lot of those trips, and they were called 50 Kings, correct?
That is correct. They started in 2011 with a cattle drive was the first thing, and they changed every year. So we've had a couple of pirate wars. We had our race through the desert in Peru, which I'm pretty sure I can't ever go back to Peru.
Yeah,
there was some damage.
There was a little bit of automobile damage. I believe the loss rate was 70% on the vehicles.
Depends on what you consider loss. Half of them left on flatbeds. As if you're just going by damage, it's probably higher than 70%. But in terms of being trucked away,
Yep.
Unable to move under their own power.
It was probably one of the funnest 5 or 6 days I've had. Just the scenery on the coast of Peru, there on the Pacific coast. It looked like Mars. It was just desolate sand. I kind of felt like we were on another planet. You remember that afternoon we were driving along the beach in that little valley, and the fog had come in, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, a lot of it was, and it wasn't just brown sand the whole time, right? They were in the desert. There were these different sort of landscapes within the desert. I mean, I planned the trip. I guess I'm biased, but yeah, it was an amazing trip, I think. I mean, I think everyone thought it was a kind of a once in a lifetime thing, which is a funny thing to say because and I still do the trips, but they're kind of different now. But, I did these trips for 8 years. And so it's always this weird thing for me to say, oh, I do a once in a lifetime trip every year. It's like, well, how does that doesn't make any sense. But,
So cattle rustling, cattle rustling, Peru, cruises. You've done. I was just with you in the Virgin Islands a few months ago, and it looks like you're going to Croatia this summer. So what other spots have you gone? But mostly, why? Why are you doing this?
So probably second to the Peru trip is we did kind of an amazing race style drug smuggling game across Panama. So the teams had these sort of challenges they had to do, and again, you get that competition involved, and it gets kind of crazy. Why do I do these things? I don't know how far back I should go with this. I'll go a little bit far back, and then maybe a little bit further. But I'm sort of obsessed with the human condition, kind of sociology in a way, and I believe that what makes people happy in life, not for a day or for a week or anything like that, but what makes people happy in life are two things. Meaningful work. Do you actually care about the work that you do? I mean, does it matter? I mean, and it doesn't have to be big. I mean, as a preschool teacher doing meaningful work, I would argue 100% absolutely they're doing meaningful work, right? and real personal relationships. And that the real personal relationships is something that I think we've largely lost. I mean, you hear people talk about digital distractions and this and this and this, and blame the phone. And I think the phone is not a great thing to always have your face buried into. But even before that, I mean, I find a lot of people have problems even having a conversation. You sit down across from lunch from someone, and they're always just like, "Oh yeah, hold on," and it's just like, Jesus Christ, put the shit down and pay attention to the person in front of you. And so, I started these trips with the idea that if you take a group of people who, you don't have to be best friends, but they have to be worth talking to.
Yeah.
Right. My thinking is like, Josh, if you turn to the person next to, if I've assembled this group and you turn to the person next to you, you don't have to love them, but you can't feel like I'm wasting my time talking to this person. So if you get a great group of people together like that, and you take them off to some place that's special, that is different, that doing activities that they don't normally do, releasing them in a lot of ways from responsibility. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs, people like yourself, and it's like, I don't want to have to think about it. Like,
just unplug.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a planner, so planning's sort of easy for me. But for a lot of people, even for entrepreneurs and things, it's not. Certainly a vacation to some strange place. Another guy who goes on the trips, he's been on a few trips in the past, and he's coming next year to Croatia. His name's Paul. But Paul just had an exit, and he had promised his childhood friends that if he ever had an exit, he would take them on a trip. So Paul starts asking me, we talk all the time. He says, where can I go? Where can I take my friends, my childhood friends? They're not all doing great. And I told him if I ever had an exit, I'd take. And we started talking about places. And I said, yeah, Paul, I said, here's the thing. I said, most of these places you're talking about, they sound good on paper, but once you get there, it's mostly just a lot of sitting around on the beach.
Right.
I'm like, we can sit here and talk about Fiji or, Tahiti or whatever it is, but what are you really doing when you get there? You're mostly just sitting your ass on a beach. And he says, yeah, that's what I that's what I keep coming back to. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm completely spoiled. You've spoiled me. You've ruined me. I can't go on vacations anymore. So just there's that element. And then, so like I said, you get this group of people together where everyone is at least worth talking to. And then you have them go, 2, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, unplugged, doing some activity that's really they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. And the relationships just become fundamentally different. They're just fundamentally different because, you're always like, you remember when we were in Peru? You remember when we were in the BVIs and, this and this and this happened? You just, and it's so different. And what's sad, I'll tell you kind of a sad thing, is people do not understand it. Everyone says they do. Right. So I've said this little spiel, 1,000 times to 1,000 people, and everyone says, oh, yeah, I totally get it. I totally get it. And then you look at the things that they do and the things that they choose to do. And, they'll say, yeah, but I don't have a lot of time off. So I'm going to go to Coachella. Great. Fine. I'm sure Coachella is a great time. I've never been, whatever. I'm not really a concert person. So I'm not going to like specifically back. It's just like, okay, I mean, so you're going to go to a great dance party for a weekend in the desert. I guess you'll remember that for a long time, but it's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. You clearly don't get it. So that's why I do it. We've evolved a little bit now. It used to just be I curated every person. Now we go on these regatta trips, and I let people get a boat so that they can bring their spouses and they can bring some friends, but it's still largely curated.
The personal connection without pretense is kind of how I put it to myself. Is, as an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur, whatever, it's almost like you're kind of pigeonholed in a mold. Like you gotta always. I'm always crushing it. Everything's awesome. Always be selling, etc. But you've created an environment with these groups that. You get there, and in the first, 20 minutes, you're kind of got your face on. Like, yeah, I do this, I do this. This is how I define myself. But then after 20, 30, 40 minutes, you can let the pretense go, and you can just kind of unplug mentally and just be yourself and genuinely connect with people. But people that understand your circumstance, that understand your life, that understand, yes, the struggle and the turmoil that you've gone through, But you don't have to pretend to be anything you're not anymore. You know, you don't have to pretend to be the smartest CEO in the world. You can just be a business owner with some other business owners and just relax and meet them on kind of mutual territory. And it was, for me, it was so relaxing and fun. Just the absurdity of Peru. But then, as you said, with the regattas and the BVIs, yeah, my wife and I went. We took a couple friends. We had this glorified, beautiful RV on water with 8 other boats. And, you know, just sailing around. And yeah, there was beaches, but there was like 2 new beaches a day as we sailed between different ports. So, you know, do you feel that is the most rewarding for you? Yes, you get to see the world, but you really get to witness and enable these kind of personal connections.
It's actually the personal connections that's most rewarding for me, is to be able to watch that. Right? Because like I said, going back to why I do it is I believe what makes people happy in life are meaningful work. I don't have any part of that. Hope, you know, we're dealing with entrepreneurs. Most of you care about your companies. And so, you know, that part of the type of people that go on the trips, the meaningful work part of their life is already taken care of, or at least I think it is. Most of the time it is. But, you know, the relationships part, you know, outside of their spouses, if they're married, is kind of not, because you're working a lot, you know, you put your company first, you know, and you know, there are groups out there, you know, various, you know, YPO, which I think you're a member of. I know some, I know they go on some trips. I guess they're okay. I don't know if the dynamics are different. I don't want to say good or bad. I mean, you know, I know a lot of friends of mine are members of YPO. They seem to like it okay. But, you know, it's the dropping of the pretense. You know, one of the things that I love watching you guys become kids.
Yeah.
Right? Become children. You become children in the best way, right? In the best way. And it's like, you know, to let these men and women come to let these people, you know, who, you know, 360 days of the year have a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You know, or at least a lot of responsibility anyway. And, you know, for 5 days, it's like, I'm 12.
Yep.
I am 12 years old. And to interact with each other as 12-year-olds, you know, and then in terms of that activity, I tell people, I say, you know, people say like, well, what are the people like? And when you talk, you know, and you know, what's the craziness and all that? I said, look, if you got a group of actual 12-year-olds, not you guys, if you got a group of 12-year-olds together and you gave them bicycles and you know, sort of just put them in front of the house on the street and said, well, you know, you can do what you want. There are going to be some 12-year-olds who are going to stay right in front of the house and kind of ride in circles. And there are going to be some 12-year-olds who are going to take their bikes and go looking for ramps or building ramps or, you know, trying to go into the woods or the desert or whatever it is. And I said, we're the guys who go looking for ramps in the woods, right? And the bigger the ramp, the better, right? But it's that freedom. It really is, like, fundamentally there's a freedom element to it. Like you said, leaving the responsibility, but also going out and being that 12-year-old who's looking for the jumps in the woods, right? That there's a freedom element in that. So for me, that's, you know, look, I go on the trips too, right? It's not like I plan the trip and stay home. Yeah. I mean, I plan the trip because I want to go on the trip. I'll tell you kind of an interesting, funny thing that happens all the time is, you know, I'll tell people, yeah, I plan these trips, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, oh, so you get to go to these places and plan them. And it's a strange comment to me, because I'll say, well, I do, but that's actually sort of the sucky part.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
logistics.
Going to some country by yourself is okay. Now I'm in some country by myself. I'm looking for, you know, the best place to stay. I'm looking for the best activities. I'm not complaining. You know, there are worse jobs, of course, but, you know, it's weird that people's minds go to that as being the best part of this job. That's not the best part of the job. The best part of the job is when I'm sitting there and watching you guys get me banned from Peru by destroying our trucks.
Yeah.
Right? Or whatever, right? I was sitting there watching that, right? Sitting there watching those activities and thinking, you know, these guys, maybe they won't be friends forever. I don't know, but they will have these shared moments,
Yeah.
and they will certainly have these relationships for a very long time. And so that's the rewarding part to me. That's so awesome to see. I don't know how many trips you take with your spouses, but now with the new model and people's ability. So I'll give you an example. Because there's Russian Alex, who you met in the BVIs. We've done a few trips that are sort of offshoots of 50 Kings. They weren't officially 50 Kings, but kind of that group, and we went off on the side. So we sailed Greece a few years ago. Our friend Joe was there as well, and Alex and his wife Irina were there. We sailed to Cuba. So we sailed from Key West to Cuba.
Is this pre-opening of Cuba?
This was post, but nobody sails. I mean, people fly in. So, to sail, and it's long sail. People think, they look at it on a map and they're like, it's 90 miles. Oh, it's 14 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it's 14, and it's big time. You don't see Florida and you don't see Cuba. When you're in the middle of that crossing, you're like, people are swimming this shit? Like, what are you, nuts?
Yeah.
Pulling in sunrise, there's the coast of Cuba, and you just sailed there from Florida, from Key West, just kind of mind-boggling. And then pulling into Hemingway Harbor, you're like, we're sailing into Cuba right now. Like this is kind of trippy. But Alex, Russian Alex, I call him Russian Alex, he's American. Alex and his wife were on that. And so there's also this element, at least with a couple like that, where I'm not that his marriage is in trouble. His marriage is great, but it's almost like he gets to take his wife on these great trips because of me.
Well, you're not too bad of a third wheel to have around. Come on.
Well, I mean, we just 4 cabins, so Joe was there too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but just being able to, like I said, watch those relationships, watch those experiences. Be there. One of the things that kind of just personally trips me out is, right, so you live in Arizona. I live in LA at the moment. I used to live in New York. I used to live in San Francisco. We have friends in Portland. We have friends and it's like all of a sudden we all show up in some place.
Mm-hmm.
I love that first day.
We're getting the band back together.
Yeah, it's this weird feeling like, I don't see you. I haven't been to Tucson, right? But all of a sudden, it's just like, poof, we're all in Lima, Peru.
Yep. And you pick up right where you left off. Like those are the types of friendships in the world that I think are invaluable. That you can go 10 years without seeing somebody, and just maybe a few text messages, and then you meet them in the airport, and you pick up right where you did 15 years ago.
Right. And then it's like, poof, we're in Tortola, British Virgin Islands. Like, it's so neat. I don't know. For me, that's just such a neat thing. That's just like, poof, here we are, right?
Yeah.
Great to see you. Where are we? Right? There's not that. Remember that time I came to Tucson? So remember that time we were, we were at Leverick Bay and the BVIs and
beautiful. There's one other aspect of this that I thought was interesting, and this is going to sound a little classist or elitist, but this is a real problem I have. When I was in Phoenix, for 11 years, that's where I built our company, and I built it in a community with a bunch of similar age, similar kind of stationed individuals, and we all kind of came up together. So we all got these shared experience of, we remember what it was like, worrying about hitting payroll, to here's my new sports car, or here's my new really expensive watch. And then I moved down to Phoenix, and I don't have that community anymore. So my kids go to a great school, lovely individuals that attend the school, and I kind of hang out with the dad's group. But I have to self-censor. I can't have a normal conversation with them that I would with somebody else, simply because I'd look like an asshole. Like they're a more traditional middle class, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just got back from the BVIs. It was sick. And then everybody's eyes roll, and I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I shouldn't talk about all these other things. But on those trips, again, you just fit right into your crew on kind of the same socioeconomic level, and you can have these discussions that maybe in polite company or normal middle class company you'd really come off looking like an arrogant jerk for, but it's just our life experience right now. It's just a little different.
I mean, that matters. I mean, it definitely matters. And sort of I won't name him by name in case some of his friends watch, but you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. You know, we have a friend who comes on the trips who comes from a pro BMX background.
Yep.
And he's done very well. But a lot of his friends are basically just these former BMX riders who, you know, God knows what they're doing for a living. I mean, you know, maybe nothing. And he's started a company and has done very well. And, you know, he loves those guys. You know, when he was 17, 16 years old, he's out doing BMX shows with those guys. So he's known them for, you know, 15 years. But he has to pick up every check.
Yeah.
Right. He just had, like, these guys are literally broke. And he has to pick up every check, and he has the money, and it you know, it's not the money, but it's just this weird kind of, you know, thing.
It kind of probably puts him in an awkward position about, let me open my garage and show you my new toy. But, you know, it's like almost you're rubbing it in at that point. Anyways, it's just having a group, like whether it's YPO or EO or your mastermind group or a group of friends that you've assembled, Francisco. I think for any entrepreneur out there, no matter what station you are in your journey, just having a group of like-minded people in a similar socioeconomic bracket, you can really kind of let your guard down and just, you know, be where you are in the moment without having to feel so guarded that if you say just the wrong thing, someone's going to take your legs out or accuse you of being, you know, classist or something like that. You know, it's a fascinating world we live in, and everybody's on a different path. Speaking of paths, what the heck got you into tech or entrepreneurship? Like, you know, 25-year career, right?
Something like that. Unfortunately, I'm old as shit. Well, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, my life has been like Forrest Gump, and you know, the word entrepreneur has been so abused. Everyone says I'm an entrepreneur. It's almost embarrassing, but it's like saying I'm a social media expert. Like, nobody wants to say that anymore. It's embarrassing. But I like to. I don't like. There are entrepreneurs and there are entrepreneurs, and I'll explain what I mean. In tech, you have these tech entrepreneurs who, you know, raise some seed money from 500 startups or whatever it is, and then they write a blog post about the struggle and how they're suffering with depression and how it's so hard. And I read those and I think, what's hard? You just wasted $50 grand of Dave McClure's money. like
that's brutal.
What are you depressed about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dave McClure should be depressed. You just wasted 50 grand of his money. You know, I've been a guy who will just put down his credit card. Right? You get an idea and you put down your credit card. And it's like, you know, people say, like, well, how do you do that? Well, what do you mean how you do it? You open up your wallet and you put down your credit card.
Yeah.
And then people have all these hang-ups. It's like, well, that's it. I said, look, you know, you either believe in it or you don't, and you're either comfortable with uncertainty or you're not.
Yep.
Now, if you believe in it and you're comfortable with uncertainty, then open up your wallet and put your credit card down, and stop writing blog posts about how you're depressed because you lost Dave's money. I mean, so, you know, it's, you know, in my 20s, I owned part. I didn't own the whole thing, but in my 20s, I owned part of like the 4th largest traffic school in California. So when you got a ticket, you went to traffic school.
Yeah.
Completely bizarre. I had met some guys who knew the business, blah, blah, blah. We also together owned a limo company, so I owned part of a limo company. I owned, well, you know this. I don't even mind talking about it. A few years, well, actually, I'll tell you the whole story because it's actually hysterical.
Yes.
So in my 20s, I was in LA. So I am 49 years old. So the years are very easy because it just matches up to the calendar year,
Yeah.
right? So in my 20s, in the 90s, it was when I had this traffic school and was part of this limo company. And then I left that. I decided I just hated both businesses. Both businesses were just like, I hated it. And it was just like, it goes back to the meaningful work. It's like, okay, even if the business is doing okay, if I hate it, like, why do it? I moved back to San Jose where I grew up. I started getting my MBA. I dropped out. I started another company, couldn't get along with my co-founders, left that. And then the .com, so this is 2000, 2001, .com collapse, .bomb collapse comes in. So San Jose, the Bay Area at the time, literally there was no traffic. Like,
Wow.
people don't know how bad like the .bomb situation was. You went from glory days, everyone having the huge parties, to you could drive to work at 7:30 in the morning and there'd be no traffic on the road.
Just a ghost town, huh?
Just a ghost town. So I was out of work. I was unemployed. I dropped out of business school. There was no work to be had. So I moved back to Los Angeles in 2002, struggling. I mean, just unemployed, struggling. And I got a job, literally just trying to get by. And I got a job. They don't exist anymore, clearly. They're called iNet Now, where I surfed the internet. I looked up things on the internet for stupid people. So the company, people would pay iNet Now $20 a month, and they could call in to a live person, me and a bunch of unemployed actors, and we would look things up for them. And they do it. Like, people would just call 100 times a day, and I would Google. I'm really good at Googling.
You were Siri before Siri.
I was Siri. I was a live person Siri. And again, just trying to get by, just trying to figure out what I was going to do next and trying to get by. And every dollar counted. And I'd always been a good writer. My college degree is actually in screenwriting. And so I knew I could write. And I ended up getting a job, freelance. They don't exist anymore. It was a review site called Adult DVD Empire. And Adult DVD Empire wrote porn reviews, and they were an affiliate site. So so the way it worked is Adult DVD Empire would send me 3 porn DVDs, and I would watch them and write reviews, and then submit the reviews and send the DVDs back, and they would give me $15 for each porn review.
Oh, tell me your name. You had to have a screen name, a pen name.
Yeah, so my name was Rock Bottom, because this was when Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, was popular in WWE, and he's hysterical. I mean, everyone knows him as a big-time actor now, but when The Rock was a wrestler, he was absolutely hysterical.
Oh, legendary. I spent so many evenings in college with a six-pack watching The Rock.
Watching The Rock. So my screen name was Rock Bottom, and I started to learn more about the porn business, and what I learned was that on the wholesale side, when a porn, and again, I guess things have changed now with its streaming and everything, but this was 2002, 2003. When a porn DVD is released, the wholesale price is, something like $10. And then 3 months later, the wholesale price drops to between $1 and $3. And I thought, well, unless you're just like the biggest pervert ever who has to watch brand new porn, who cares if your DVDs are 3 months old? Like, who cares? Like, what kind of person is out there waiting for the new releases? It's like, oh, look, Marvel's Infinity War is releasing, and the new porn! I gotta have the new porn. So I started a website called Rock Bottom Video, which now belongs to someone else. I long gone, gave up the domain. But I started a website called Rock Bottom Video, where all of our DVDs were $9.99 or less. Our slogan was, "If you've got $10, we'll sell you porn." and I tried to sell DVDs. We sold some. We didn't really know what we were doing. This was, again, 2002, still relatively early days of e-commerce. Mostly I got to go to porn parties. Mm-hmm. I got to go to a decent number of porn parties, which was fun. So that kind of, I don't know what it was, a year and a half of going to porn parties. I've been to porn movie reviews. So it's really funny because they're sort of the reverse of reality. So I remember being at if any of the viewers know who Jessie Jane is, she was a big time porn star in the 90s. So Jessie Jane was the star of this movie.
This feature film.
This feature film, and we were at a club. We were at a club in Beverly Hills, and the party, and then they gather everyone into a room, and they start showing it. It's like a movie premiere.
Oh, it's a screening. Okay.
It's a screening. It's a screening, and Jessie Jane is sitting, a couple seats, 2-3 seats away from me, and it's so funny because I'm going to make some assumptions here. I don't know if this is true. I think most people fast forward through the dialogue and just watch the sex.
Mm-hmm.
In the screening, Jessie is sitting there, and she's kind of she's sort of embarrassed, and she says, "Can't we fast forward through the sex and just get to the dialogue?"
Oh.
And I'm like, I am living in a bizarro world right now. I'm living in an absolute reverse bizarro world. This is just the craziest thing on earth. So from there, so I ended up getting a better day job. So back in tech.
Had to sell rock bottom.
So I closed it because my co-founder, my partner at the time, I mean, we were literally shipping out of his garage, and he just started getting sloppy.
Uh-oh.
And somebody ordered a DVD called 40 Lays and 40 Nights. And
the biblical tell.
And he shipped them a video called I mean, I'm probably getting it a little bit wrong, but you'll get the gist of it. I think the DVD was called 40 of the World's Most Fabulous She-Males.
Oh, so similar but different.
Yeah, exactly. So I at the time, I had a day job. I got back, sort of career track. I wasn't no longer surfing the internet for stupid people, Googling things for stupid people. So the day job was going well, and I started doing stand-up comedy. So I was a semi-pro stand-up comic. I have been paid on more than one occasion, very small amounts, but I have had a couple of paid gigs in my life.
Wow.
And I got laid off from my day job, from my good day job. I was doing international sales for a tech company. I got laid off in June 2004. And at this point, I'd been going out in the evenings and doing stand-up comedy. So I get it in my head that I am going to be a motivational speaker.
Oh.
Now, yeah, well.
Tony Robbins.
Here
he come.
Now, I was, a marginally successful entrepreneur, kind of, I mean, my businesses worked, but I wasn't rich. And I went to a crappy college, so there was nothing, right? There was nothing there. So people said, well, if you want to be credible, you should write and get things published. And this was before everybody was a blogger. This was when, writing still sort of mattered a little bit. Long story short, I end up as the leadership column for Inc.com, for Inc. Magazine online, press company online. Yeah. So I do that. It's not paid, but this was before everyone was a contributor. Like I had a photo and a column,
right?
And the whole thing. Still doesn't mean I'm making any money as a motivational speaker, but now all of a sudden I'm credible. And long story short, I meet some people. They say, "Oh, you're the leadership columnist for Inc. Magazine, online, and do you want to be a life coach?" I'm not touchy-feely. I mean, for anyone watching, I mean, this is actually as nice as I get. I'm normally like, "What the fuck are you talking about? How is that going to work?" But they told me, they were like, "Well," I said, "Well, what's the gig?" They said, "Well, we'll get you the clients. You basically just talk to them on the phone, and we'll give you $70 an hour." Said, great! I don't even have to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I end up, and this is kind of the thing earlier where I said, you end up with these job titles that you're embarrassed about, like social media guru.
Yeah.
Right. I end up as a life coach, which is just super embarrassing to me. To me, it's just super embarrassing. But I would lay in bed and, literally be on something like this, talking to people going, "Well, how are you going to do that?" Like, I want to be rich and famous. You live in Idaho and you're kind of ugly.
Oh, the crusher of dreams.
Well, the self-help world is based on lies. All of it. All of it is based on lies.
Lies that you tell yourself, or lies that the coach tells you?
Both. So, I'll expose the two sort of main ones. One is this whole, they'll tell you these stories of, Brad Pitt was the El Pollo Loco chicken before he became, Brad Pitt. That's a true story. Or all these, for all reasonable purposes, unless someone was a child star, every actor in LA, every movie star has worked as a waiter or waitress or something of that sort, right? Jennifer Aniston was a waitress. Brad Pitt was the El Pollo Loco chicken. Those are both true stories. And so people tell these stories, to motivate, if I just, work as the El Pollo Loco chicken, I'll turn into Brad Pitt. No, there are so many actors, and I'm using actors, musicians, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
Who were waiters and never became Brad Pitt and never became Jennifer Aniston, right? I've lived in LA a long time. I've partied. I partied with Ron Jeremy has been to my house. I partied with Corey Feldman on multiple occasions, and this is back in the 90s. Right? I've known actors who've quote unquote made it, and then their show gets canceled.
Yeah.
And they move away. Right? Like even when you make it, that doesn't mean you've made it forever, right? You might have had 3 years on a show and then you never work again and you move away. No, I'm not saying this to crush anybody's dreams. I mean, if you want to go for it, then go for it. But when people tell these stories, they're telling you these stories with the survivorship bias.
Yep.
Right? For all reasonable purposes, every actor in LA was a waiter. That does not mean that every actor who came to LA and waited tables became Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lie. That's just fundamentally a lie. Right? Those stories are just a lie. I mean, there's just the other lie, and it's almost all based on lies, but the other sort of big lie that I think is told is people say, well, what would you do? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Well, that's a ridiculous statement. If I knew I couldn't fail, I would be John Bon Jovi. Right? I mean, Bon Jovi is married to his high school sweetheart. The guy became a rock star at 19. He's had a 40-year career, 35-year career, whatever it is, 40-year career. Mm-hmm. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. His band is largely intact. Richie Sambora left like 5 years ago, but otherwise he's had the exact same band the whole time. I'd be Bon Jovi. I don't sing. I don't play guitar. I don't, right? But if you're telling me that I can wake up tomorrow and be whatever I want to be, well, that's the answer. The real question that should be asked, the truth is, if I told you I would pay, well, you're already successful, but someone out there trying to figure out what they want to. If I said, okay, I'll pay you, $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, enough for you to live, and then magic, win the lottery, get a check for $50,000 a year. How would you spend your days? That's the real question, right? So if John Bon Jovi had never become Bon Jovi, would he still be playing guitar? Yeah. Would he still be writing music? Probably. I mean, I don't know the guy, but I mean,
there's a high probability, yeah.
Right. Would I be playing guitar? No, because I don't play guitar now. But if you're telling me I can wake up tomorrow and be whoever I wanted.
Yeah.
Right? And so the self-help world is just built on these lies. And I ended up as a life coach. I never, peddled these lies, but someone paid me $70 an hour to talk to people on the phone. So I do that for a few. So back to the story. I haven't forgotten the story. So I do that for a few years. And after about 4 years, so now we're like 2008, I decide that I just simply cannot talk to these people anymore. I hated them. I said, I can't talk. I hate you all. I dread these calls.
Yeah.
I'm just going to listen to these people and their bullshit.
People are difficult sometimes.
Well, it's that the self-delusion, right? I just don't like self-delusion. right? Just be honest with good or bad, right? If you're a selfish person, say you're a selfish person, right?
Yeah.
If you commit crime, say you're a criminal. It's just this hypocrisy and self-delusion just drive me kind of nuts. So in 2008, I decided that one of the things that was important to me was I want kind of going everything. All of my stories actually loop back on each other. It's kind of funny. You were talking about being around great people and sort of a peer group, or at least people that you wanted to be around. So in 2008, I decided that I was going to add sort of a side life goal to things I wanted in life, and what that was I wanted to be around interesting people, because I just spent 4 years talking to people I hated.
Yeah, very disinteresting people.
Yeah. So I was like, I need to be around interesting people. I want to be around the most interesting people that I can. And the tech industry, when I say tech, I really mean the startup. I'm not talking about big companies in the middle of America, but the startup industry at the time was kind of neat. It was kind of open. It was relatively easy to meet people. And I thought, and because I was still a leadership columnist for Inc. magazine, I was able to get press credentials, and I just sort of made it a point to meet. I'm not technical. I don't know how to code or anything, but I made it a point to meet interesting people and again, it just sort of the world aligned where those people for me happen to be in the startup world.
Yep.
Because I just wanted to be around interesting people. I wanted to be around people that I found interesting, that were doing things that I, could look up to, who could accomplish things that I hadn't accomplished. So it just became a thing. And from there, I ended up running a regular conference, which allowed me to meet a bunch more entrepreneurs and VCs and that kind of thing. And then from there, that evolved into 50 Kings. Yeah, so the stories actually do come back.
They do come full circle. And that time, I think that 2006, 7, 8, 9, that late aughts time frame, I think is very special. Maybe because I'm biased, because that's when my start really kind of got my career going. But it seemed like, it was the post.com bubble. We went through a little depression, and then things are starting to come back, but things were new and interesting, and social media was just taking off. And where now Twitter is just a shit show, back in the early days, anybody you wanted to meet that happened to be on there, you had like this instant connection. You're like, oh shit, you're an NBA player. Hey dude, what's up? Oh, and he replies, oh, I'm fine. Playing the Cavaliers tonight or something. It was just so easy and new, and I think the vibe and like the community, like the in-person community events too, was very different. Now it just seems jaded, and like South by Southwest is like 50,000 people or something now. Like, how do you have a personal connection there now? I don't know.
You don't. So there's a couple things. Now, again, all of my stories actually loop back on each other, and everything I sort of, they all end up making sense, or at least I think they do. One of the things that I've come to believe in is I think there are eras in terms of communities or things like that. And as you said, this sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, there was an era. There was just this period where things were open for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you can't predict the eras. They're just sort of, if you're lucky to be there during that era.
Yep.
Right. I was lucky to be there. You were lucky to be there. Now, people that I met back then so easily, walk around the floor of TechCrunch Disrupt. It's like, I met all these people. How? I don't know. They were just there. Yeah. They're not there anymore. You go to a TechCrunch conference now, they're who are these people? Like, I don't. Back then, you were just walking around. It's like, hey, there's so-and-so, and there's so-and-so, and they're just. So one is the era, is that concept of era. Two is, so I have a theory, I have a belief that all open systems degrade, and that doesn't matter if it's online or offline, right? So I didn't go to an Ivy League school, and I certainly wasn't at an Ivy League school in 2004, but look, I love Facebook. I still use Facebook. It's wonderful, but I got to think Facebook was better when it was the Ivy Leagues only, and you were a college, if you were a Harvard, Columbia, whatever student in 2004, and it was just a bunch of Ivy League kids, right, before the Russians, right? pre-Russia Facebook.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was better than
which is worse, though, Russia Facebook or old people Facebook?
well, I mean, so you talk about Twitter, right? So Twitter was always open, but it was, I don't want to say it was a secret, but
It was just
small,
underground.
right?
It was underground,
small.
yeah.
And then now you go on and it's it's a hive of scum and villainy. It's Mos Eisley from Star Wars. That happens in real life as well. You've seen, I don't know if you know what bar camp is or any of the viewers know what bar camp is, but I remember the first bar camp in LA was just like this sort of magical, cool, everybody knew each other. 2 bar camps later, it's people trying to sell you real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, the open systems degrade. And I think all open systems degrade. It just can't be helped. And so you talk about being an elitist or saying things that might be sound a little, I don't think it is, right? Because just like, if you don't have some sort of barrier to entry, your system is going to degrade.
Yeah. And so that's essentially what you've done with your trips. You were the barrier to entry and kind of curating personality types and such. So that when you brought them together, there was some commonality there, intentional on your part.
Well, 100% intentional. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was actually I tell people, and again, the trips are a little bit different now. I trust the boat leaders to curate their own boats. It seems to have worked okay, except for our one friend who, I don't know what happened there. And of 8 boats, 7 of the boats were amazing.
Yeah.
1 boat was
fascinating.
Fascinating. Most people actually have no idea how curation works, or even how social dynamics work, but they do if they really think about it. So there's a couple things that I believe. One is that what makes I'll use the term VIP, even though it sounds kind of douchey, but what makes a room VIP is not the best person, it's the worst person.
Right.
Right. So if using the Harvard as an example, we went to Harvard right now, left the professors, left the campus, but took away 70% of the student body and replaced them with clowns, it's not Harvard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can sit there and say, my professor won a Nobel Prize, and that might be a true statement, but if 70% of the people in that room are idiots, I'm sorry, that's not a Harvard classroom or Stanford or, fill in the blank. The other thing is just that dynamic between people. So I tell people it's a little bit like think of it like planning the seating chart at a wedding.
That's kind of making me sweat. If you've been through that with your spouse, it's an interesting endeavor. It's an interesting endeavor,
but if you do it right, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's just like, and then then you can, if you do it right or do it well, then you can watch how these tables that you put together, had a great time. Whereas if you don't plan that seating chart well, you're just like, oh man, we screwed this up. So, there's those dynamics there. But really, I mean, just that open versus closed system, and it sucks. So here's a kind of a related. I've started thinking recently. I have these sort of ideas and things that I play with in my head. And one of the things is above sort of financial security, and we'll even go a little bit financial security plus toys.
Plus right? Toys, right?
Yeah. So above financial security plus toys, what's the point of being rich? Above financial security plus toys.
That is a very good question, because you can't spend it all fast enough if you're the Bill Gates of the world, or even somewhere well below Bill Gates. Even $1 billion, a single billion, unfathomable. It's unfathomable.
I mean, you gotta go out Michael Jackson style, just buying ridiculous things to go through $50 million in a lifetime. I mean, you got to really just be like. So I started thinking. I was like, well, I actually think the reason to be rich or try to be rich, I'm not rich, but the reason to try to be rich above financial security plus toys is so you can be around interesting people. It goes back to that, be around interesting people, right? It's like, look, if you're a guy worth, again, we don't even have to talk about billions. If you're a guy worth $50 million, you can go to places with other people who are interesting, who are not going to ask you to pick up the check for dinner or whatever it is, right? And so it just becomes like, all right. So that's actually, like, people don't think about it that way, but it's kind of true.
Your value system shifts not on the material, but to the experiences. Like Sally and I, we were just talking about this the other day. Our couch is starting to fray. And she's like, I'm not buying a new couch. This couch is just fine. I'm like, that's my girl. That's what I'm talking about. But we will squirrel away money to go take a sick vacation and have a great experience. But we'll be fine with a couch that's, showing a few threads. But we also have little kids that'll just destroy it. So
right. So it's but the and the way you view, I believe, and I'm speaking in generalizations, of course. This doesn't apply to everybody, but I think what you value actually changes.
Yeah.
So something that I would tell people, say, look, if you're a nobody, and I'm a nobody, I mean, I'm just some dude, right? If you're a nobody, you want to be famous. Generally speaking, right? I'm making a generalization here, but if you're nobody, you want to be famous. You want to be a superstar. You want to go to the restaurant and get the best table, right? But if you're famous, what you actually want is privacy.
You want your anonymity back.
All right, you actually want the exact opposite things. If you're Brad Pitt, you want to be able to go to Clooney's house, have a private dinner. You're already Brad Pitt. You don't need to, And so there's this weird sort of flip. Now you want to be at Clooney's house with interesting people. You don't want to be at Clooney's house with idiots, right? But you do want to be there with a small group.
Yeah.
5, 10 people. Right. And so there's just this weird sort of value system shift when sort of the more successful people become. Most people, again, not everybody, but I think most people, right? You get someone with a lot of money, the last thing they want to talk about is money because people are hitting them up for money all the time. You get someone who's famous, well, the fame wears on them, so they want their privacy back. Mm-hmm. Right. Whereas if you have no money and you're unknown, those are the things that you want. So there's a very interesting sort of reverse, flip in what people value.
So you have spent a lot of time, it sounds like, through your career working with people and understanding people and how people work and the dynamics of group dynamics and such. So how have you parlayed that into, kind of current ventures? What are you doing today to keep yourself busy?
Well, we still do 50 Kings, although it's now called Regatta Con. And you mentioned we're going to Croatia, so we have boats booked in Croatia, and I don't know if anyone's watching this and they're interested in joining us in Croatia, hit me up.
It's a wonderful time.
But I started. I mentioned earlier that I am kind of a quote unquote pure entrepreneur, someone who gets an idea or gets just like sees something that he thinks is interesting and will put his credit card down. And so I started a caffeinated. I'll take one out of the box.
Kaffa bar.
Kaffa bar. So Kaffa is Kaffa or Kaffa. I don't care how you pronounce it. Is a region in Ethiopia where coffee. The origins of coffee. Apparently, in some South Africa, I think kaffa is a racial bad term. But
Oops.
In America, we're fine. But anyway, it's a region. The real definition is it's a region in Ethiopia where coffee came from. And I created a caffeinated protein bar. We're getting some nice traction. We're in a very fancy. There's there's a supermarket chain, 5 stores, small chain in LA called Erewhon, which is like the super high end, more expensive Whole Foods.
Yeah.
People are like, if Whole Foods is whole paycheck, Erewhon is whole bank account. It's like the celebrity Whole Foods. Erewhon's like the celebrity. So we're in Erewhon in LA, and you can order it online, kaffebar.com. I'm a bachelor. I'm a lifelong bachelor. I've never been married. And so I don't cook, but I try to eat like sort of kind of healthy. Mm-hmm. And so I eat bars, which is better than fast food, I guess, although I eat fast food too. But I've always eaten just tons of bars because it was a way to at least sort of control what I was eating.
Yeah.
And you know, there's some okay bars out there, and there's certainly some decent bars out there, but I never found one that I really liked. And the other thing is, I don't drink coffee not because I'm anti-coffee, just because I'm a bachelor. I'm too lazy to make coffee for one.
Yeah, and you don't want to be that guy that uses the pod system and just pollute
Yeah,
everywhere.
I need a big old machine, coffee for one.
Yeah.
So you know, I made this caffeinated protein bar, all natural, gluten-free.
How much caffeine is in it? About a cup of coffee?
About a cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you Google like caffeine in a cup of coffee, it'll say 80 to 140. So this is 110 milligrams. It's a 17 grams. Oops. Oh shoot, 17. Oh, hold on, I dropped it on my computer screen. Oh, we're back.
Yeah, you're
17 grams of protein. Yeah, so we're doing that. It's exciting. I've spent all my money on it, as I was talking about. I've put the credit card down and maxed it.
So you're bootstrapping this venture.
Yeah, I mean, we probably want to go out and raise like a little bit. I don't want to say I don't get it. I know how the math works, but like, you know, the people who go out and raise millions and millions of dollars, they don't realize it's like, well, now you have to sell it for like 100 million. Like that's the math starts working against you.
Yeah.
We probably want to go.
When it's just you can do it as you want. Once you bring in institutional money, there is only two outcomes. You die, or you're in every supermarket in the United States.
Yeah.
Because they won't settle for anything less.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, like, if one of my jobs that we didn't talk about it is I used to, again, Forrest Gump, I used to run an AI accelerator, and we were given $100,000 for 7%. I'm totally down for like that. Because you can still sell the company for $2 million and everybody makes money, right? It's like it still makes sense. But when you look at some of these numbers of like we went out and raised 40 million, wait, how are people going to get their money back on that? Like you're going to have to sell this, what? So we're probably looking for 100 grand, 150 grand, something like that. But that the math, you talk about you have to be in every supermarket. I mean, I don't. I look at the math on like Soylent or Bulletproof Coffee, the amounts of money that they raise, and maybe they'll get there. I don't know. Nobody knows the future, but just from a pure math standpoint, I'm just like, these people just have to just completely go nuts. I mean, somehow they got to make these companies worth $1 billion if for people to make money.
Well, it sounds like you're looking for Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. Hey, Mark, when you're listening, I've had these coffee bars. They're amazing. They have this sweet kind of toasted toffee taste to them. They're delicious.
So, people like them. We're actually doing a demo tomorrow at a celebrity gym. There's a gym here called Rise Nation in LA, which is basically like you could Google like Jennifer Aniston Rise Nation, and it's like Jennifer Aniston's favorite workort.
So a little product placement in front of influencers.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you've had it. People seem to love the bar, right? If the bar doesn't taste great, then it doesn't. Like people want to eat the damn thing. So we're real happy with the taste and the nutrition, caffeine, protein, those elements of the bar, and now it's just getting it out there. Try to get it out there.
If I can ask you, what was the it's not really manufacturing, but you had to do prototypes and testing, and you had to find the baker or the suppliers of the ingredients, and then someone to actually make it and wrap it. I mean, what was that kind of process like, briefly?
Yeah, so we skipped over. I say we. I have a co-founder. He did all the packaging. Everybody loves the packaging.
Yeah.
It's really good looking. A lot of people will start like a food or CPG, consumer packaged good company. They'll literally start in their kitchen. Well, as I said, I'm a bachelor. I don't even make my own coffee, so there was just no way for me to be making these bars. I found it like our first step. We basically skipped over that step. Wow. So I had the idea for the bar because if you're someone who works out, there's something called the pre-workout, which is what people will eat or do before they go to the gym. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, and it's not limited to pre-workout. It could just be morning breakfast on the go.
But that was where your inspiration came from.
It came from two parts. So one was just the breakfast on the go, because I don't drink coffee because I'm too lazy to make it, for one. It's just stupid to make coffee for one, I think. I don't know. Some lady in the supermarket. I was in the supermarket, the high-end market that we're in, doing the demo. Literally, I'm in the market doing demos. I'm doing everything in this company. And some woman comes up and I said, "Would you like to try a sample?" And she says, "Sure." And I go into my 30-second spiel. And I said, "Yeah, I'm the founder of the company and I don't like making coffee." And she gave me this look. She's like, "That's pathetic." I said, "It's making it's a mess. You got to clean up."
Yeah.
but there was that, right? So there was the element of just sort of all-in-one breakfast on the go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can have a cup of coffee and a scone or a muffin or whatever it is, or I can just get this and it's better for you, and you can drive and you're not going to spill it, and whatever it is. So that was one. And then the pre-workout angle was the other angle. So for the guys, I say guys, women too, whatever. You'll sometimes see people do like a Red Bull and a protein shake, or a Monster and a protein shake, or a cup of coffee and a protein shake, or something like that. I've done that. It's kind of gross. It works, but it's kind of gross. So again, it was kind of a thing of like, look, if we put the caffeine in the bar,
bingo,
like it just solves all the problems.
Yeah.
and it's not gross. I'm not sitting here with a berry tasting Monster and a milky tasting protein shake. It's just,
so you went right to the food manufacturer, told them what you wanted, tested a few samples, dialed it in, and away you went.
Yeah. So I found, I contacted a few co-packers, ordered some samples from them, started working with them on the recipe, told them what we want. Our product has honey and dairy in it, so it's not vegan. We originally tried a vegan recipe, and it was just not good. I was just like, I'd really love to be able to advertise vegan, but nobody's going to want to eat this except vegans.
It may be good for vegans. Maybe they're used to chewing on cardboard. I don't know.
It's like a lower standard of what's good. Sorry, vegans. So I said, I want this to be amazing. I'm willing to we can still make it all natural. Just we're going to have honey and dairy in it, and it'll change the makeup of the bar. And so we just ended up with a recipe that I thought was fantastic. And again, people seem to really love it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the co-packer does the production. So, these grubby hands are never actually on the bar. I mean, the co-packer, they're FDA approved. They have all the certificates. Yeah. It's just a massive. I honestly don't understand how people, make product in a kitchen to sell in a supermarket. It's just weird to me. Like, it's just like you just like cook this at home and then show up at the supermarket. Like, that's just weird. Like,
yeah, that's very reasonable way to look at it, though. You're like, my expertise isn't in making foodstuffs, so why should I bother doing that?
Yeah, and there's so many little regulations. What can you put on the wrapper? What are your health claims or not claims, and all these things, right? And so, we work with a co-packer, to not just make the bar, but help us with all of sort of make sure we're within FDA compliance and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, it is delicious. We have a box that we bought when you announced them, and it's just about empty. So I got to go get some more from you. So,
right.
Francisco, what a great conversation from your beginnings as a reviewer for porn DVDs to Ink Magazine to adventure trips for 12-year-olds or adults that like to
40-year-old 12-year-olds.
Adults that like to act like 12-year-olds. It sounds like it's been quite a journey, and now kaffa bars are on sale in the LA area, right? So thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful catching up with you. Can you tell everybody where to find you online?
Well, I don't tweet much anymore unless I'm tweeting about this, but my Twitter handle is the man.
See, that's 2008. You could get that in 2008.
I could be the man. I don't know. I'm Francisco Dow. Last name is D as in Delta, A as in Alpha, O as in Omega. I don't know. I guess you can find me. Kaffa Bars, KAFABAR.com. RegattaCon Do I have a RegattaCon website? I think our RegattaCon website.
There is a
redirects-
Facebook group for RegattaCon, a Facebook page.
Oh, yeah. So anyway,
Well,
yeah.
So thanks again, Francisco, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Joshua.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.